I'm here with Nicholas. Nicholas, thank you for taking the time with us today.
Pleasure. Nice to be here.
I want to talk about your lovely film, Gore Vidal. Tell me a little bit about the process. What made you want to do a film on him?
Sure. Originally I was very motivated by Gore's writing around 9/11. It really motivated me to finally have a voice at that time who was speaking out against, all the media propaganda that billowed right after 9/11, all the bellicose, drum-beating, war, everyone wanting to go straight to war in the Middle East. And Gore was sort of a voice of reason, all the writing he did around that time, and being very outspoken on TV, and writing those pamphlets, Dreaming War and Blood for Oil. That kind of got me started, and then a couple of years later I had the opportunity to meet Gore through his nephew, Boris Steers, who's a good friend of mine, an old friend of mine. And, we just talked a lot, and it just seemed like a great opportunity that couldn't be missed to make a film about this incredible, legendary intellect.
It's fascinating because you were fortunate enough to be able to talk with him because you have many personalities from the spectrum of from entertainment to politics who talk about him.
Mm-hmm.
Tell me a little bit about their feelings that maybe didn't make it into the film. It's something that was spared.
You mean other people?
Yes.
Well, there's certainly, Gore knew everyone, and he was interviewed by everyone from Carson, Dick Cavett, Charlie Rose, everyone on every talk show pretty much that could get Gore got him at some point. He loved being on TV. One of his famous quotes, he wouldn't miss an opportunity to have sex or be on television. And, my focus in the film was more to just have Gore speak for himself. I did interview Dick Cavett with Gore, but not separately. And I didn't try and interview all the personalities he knew, because there was just so many, and, who would be the best choice. And plus a lot of the people he knew in his younger years had passed away now. And so the focus was really to let Gore speak for himself, rather than have other people speaking about him. Of course, we did have a few other people in the film, including Dick Cavett, but really just to keep as sort of glue and to fill in some holes and some gaps where things that Gore maybe skipped over or that were more interesting from another perspective. So, that was the way I approached it.
Did your perspective change as you became more intimate with him and everyone else, their personal views? Did your view change a little bit about him? Or did it...
About him?
Yeah, or did it just get reinforced?
It did. My views definitely developed as I got to know him. I knew a certain amount about Gore and reading about him and talking to other people about him, but I was sort of very much in awe of him in the beginning and very nervous, a little nervous around him. He's a very strong-willed, strong-minded person, doesn't suffer fools, and, it was a little intimidating to be interviewing him in a one-on-one situation, but I just tried to be really prepared and go in there, ready for anything, although, he liked to steer the conversation anyway, and he usually stuck to the things he wanted to speak about. But my perception of him changed. I guess I always saw him as sort of prickly, fierce person, but once I got to know him, he's actually a very kind and caring person. I spent a lot of time with him just chatting about Australian politics, which is where I'm originally from, or what's going on in the Middle East or Africa. He loved to talk about everything. And, I saw him with his grandnieces and, with his cat and with the people around his house. And he had a soft side as well. He was a very caring person. He liked to drink, so I spent quite a lot of time with him drinking, and he loved to tell sort of crazy, bawdy stories after he'd had a few drinks, things that he wouldn't say on camera. But I saw a lot of different aspects of him, so my perception of Gore developed a lot, and I grew to like him as a person more than just be enamored with him as a sort of iconic intellectual.
When you were developing the idea about doing the film, Was this something fairly recent, or was it, going back a little ways? Did you think about, I want to do this at one point in my life?
I always wanted to make some documentaries, and I always felt like I wanted to make something that really could reach a lot of people and speak to critical thinking and critical analysis of American politics and society. That's always been something that interested me. I can't say that I had the idea to make the film about Gore for a long time. It came really, like I said, out of those writings that motivated me, and out of the opportunity of meeting him and realizing that there was a possibility there. After that, I did spend a lot of time thinking about it before we started, a lot of time reading and researching. But then there was a point when we just had to jump in, because he was selling his house in Italy and moving back to LA. So we just sort of started, and we weren't fully funded or fully prepared at that point, but we jumped in.
After you did your interviews, and even at this point, the documentary being done, when you talk with friends and family about your experience, what's their response?
People are amazed, actually. Even I'm a little bit amazed that we got this done. And Burstiers, Gore's nephew, my friend, he at the premiere in Tribeca said to me, "I can't believe you made this film," because first of all, we had a lot of difficulty with finance and with other personalities around Gore that were quite trying to restrict his time. But then once he got to know me and once we got going, he opened up, and the film picked up a bit of speed. But generally, people that I know and family and friends, they just want to know what he was like and hear more stories. And they're all he has a huge reputation, so a lot of people are amazed that I got to make this film. And frankly, I guess I am too. I feel very blessed and lucky that we were able to do it, but a lot of hard work went into the film, and there was a lot of times when I really had to keep my foot in the door to keep things open and keep coming back to him and persevere, and when we had obstacles in our way that we had to push through. So
you put your foot in the door, like how you said that, and keep it going.
Yeah.
Did he ever make mention, or did you ask what he would have liked for the audience to walk away from the film, from his perspective?
I did ask him that, and at the end of the film, but he just sort of brushed it aside and made a joke of it. It's in the film. It's a closing scene of the film. But, I know for a fact that he was always very on point, and he was always very aware of the point he was making and the public persona he was delivering. And so I think even with me, even though he let his guard down a few times while I was traveling with him, whatever, he always knew what he was saying, and he always knew that he was getting his message across, whether he was critiquing the Kennedy administration or talking about the military-industrial establishment or talking about the banking system or Bush or whatever. He was always very clear and very cutting in his critique of the country and the politics and culture. So I think, even though he didn't try and editorialize my film or get involved with that, he was always clear about the message he wanted to get out.
And in the film, were there some scenes, or was there something in particular that didn't quite make it into the film that you wished would have been there, or in hindsight, wish you would have added?
There were a lot of scenes that didn't make it into the film. And even a lot of aspects of Gore's life that didn't make it into the film. A lot of the people he knew that we would have loved to explore. I did some interviews with people that didn't make it into the film. We did a scene with... I went to Cuba with Gore at one point, and that whole scene didn't really make it into the film. There's a few moments that I shot in Cuba, not in context, just when he's talking about the administration. But, there was a whole scene that we cut of him going to Cuba and exploring Cuba and talking about the blockade. And, in the end, he didn't meet Castro, and it didn't really go anywhere that changed his life, or it didn't seem important enough, this trip at the end of his life, to fit in the film. Plus, it was so tangential that we had to leave it out. There were a lot of other things, too. Like, in his early life, he lived briefly in Guatemala, and he talked a lot about the politics there, and he was being visited by Anias Nin and there, and there was a whole sort of subplot there, a sub-story that we could have included in the film, but again, it was tangential. And so many other things. There was a lot of more analysis of different aspects of, the second half of the 20th century. That we do cover a lot of points with the different presidents and so on in the film, but there was deeper analysis of a lot of those events that we could have included, that there was just too much information, and even with the Buckley debates, I have 5-hour-long DVDs of those debates, and, I think we included 7 minutes of that in the end, but there's easily 30 minutes of amazing discussion between those two men that we could have included.
So we'll be looking for a director's cut in the future, maybe?
I think at some point we'll definitely put together some DVD extras, because there are a lot of great moments that we couldn't include in the film that, that people would love to see. So,
just a couple more questions.
Of course.
It seems like this current generation, there seems to be a larger gulf between the older generations.
Yeah, I would agree with that.
And it seems like a lot of the people who we idolize or look to be as someone who, to admire, to become like, they seem to be forgetting or not know who they are.
Yeah, I would agree that a lot of the younger generation, the millennials or whatever they're called, they don't really know anything about Gore Vidal. Very few of them do. Maybe they do from their parents, or they have an image of who he was, but they don't really know much. And to be honest, that was a big factor in me making the film. That was one of the reasons I made the film, was because I felt like we needed to get, Gore's ideas, his message, his spirit to a younger audience. And I know that a lot of the younger people that have seen the film have really enjoyed it, and a lot of young people have come to me after the screenings and said, "Wow, I'm so glad you made this film, and I want to go and read Gore now." And they're really motivated by his ideas, and I've tried to make the film in a very contemporary style to reach those people as well and keep it humorous and engaging. So I hope a lot of young people get to see the film and discover Gore Vidal.
And is that what you would like them to walk away with, to discover who he was? And
also, yes, I think to discover who he was and to allow his legacy to live on, but also to be motivated by his critical thinking and his speaking truth to power, and to realize that is very important, and not to accept things on face value from the media, and to learn from him.
Wonderful. Nicholas, congratulations, and thank you for taking the time with us, and good luck with all your future projects.
Thank you so much. It's nice to be here.